The morning sun shone through the kitchen window as Kang poured his tea. His old hands shook a little, but he didn't spill a drop. At 72 years old, he had learned to work with his body's limits. Kang looked out at his small farm outside Seattle. The corn was growing well this year. 5 acres wasn't much, but it was enough for one old man to tend. Enough to keep him busy since Mija had passed away 5 years ago. He sipped his tea and winced. Too hot. Patience was something he had plenty of these days. Another day, he said to the empty kitchen. Sometimes he talked just to hear a voice in the quiet house. After breakfast, Kang put on his work clothes and old boots. The day was clear and warm, perfect for fixing the tractor that had been giving him trouble. Before heading to his workshop, he checked his phone. No messages from Jin, his daughter. She was busy with her life in the city. She had important work with computers. Kang didn't understand it all, but he was proud. In his workshop, tools hung neatly on the walls. Everything had its place. Kang turned on the radio to a classical station and began working on the tractor engine. "This carburetor is almost as old as I am," he muttered, cleaning the parts with careful hands. His fingers, though stiff with arthritis, still remembered every movement. Before buying this farm, Kang had been an engineer for 40 years. Not just any engineer. He had designed parts for NASA spacecraft, parts that were now floating somewhere far above Earth. As he worked, his mind drifted back to those days. The excitement when a rocket launched with components he had helped design. The late nights solving problems no one had faced before. The respect in younger engineers' eyes when he walked into a room. Now, the only eyes watching him belonged to the barn cat that sometimes visited his workshop. At noon, Kang made a simple lunch: rice, kimchi from a jar his neighbor Mrs. Park had given him, and leftover fish. He ate at the small kitchen table, looking at a photo of Mija. "The tractor is giving me trouble again," he told the picture. "But I'll fix it. Always do." After lunch, his back ached too much to return to the workshop. Instead, Kang walked his property line, checking fences. The physical activity helped ease the stiffness in his joints. When evening came, he made a simple dinner and ate while watching the news. More troubles in the world. Politics he didn't understand anymore. Technology moving too fast. After washing his dishes, Kang did what he did every clear night. He took his telescope out to the back porch. This telescope was old, a retirement gift from his NASA colleagues 15 years ago. But the lens was excellent, and the stars looked just as beautiful through it as they had when he was young. Kang pointed the telescope toward his favorite spot, the area where the International Space Station often passed. There was a time when he knew every part of that station, could name every component, and who designed it. As he adjusted the focus, something unusual caught his eye, a light pattern moving differently than satellites normally do. It wasn't following any orbit he recognized. It seemed to be changing direction. "That's not right," Kang said, adjusting the telescope again. The light grew brighter, moving in a zigzag pattern. Then it seemed to split into 2 lights, one continuing across the sky, the other. The other was getting bigger, coming closer. Kang stepped back from the telescope, looking up with his naked eye. There was definitely something in the sky, something bright, and moving fast. Too fast. And it was heading straight for his cornfield. A flash of light, a distant crash, and then silence. Kang stood frozen on his porch, heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. "Well," he said to himself, reaching for the flashlight he kept by the door. "That's different." Kang moved carefully through his cornfield, flashlight beam bouncing ahead of him. His heart was still racing, but curiosity pushed him forward. Fallen corn stalks made a path toward whatever had crashed. "Hello," he called out. "Anyone there?" No answer came but a faint hissing sound. Kang smelled something burning, not like wood or grass, but like hot metal and strange chemicals. After walking about 50 yards, Kang found it. A hole in his cornfield, maybe 20 feet across. At the center sat something that made him stop in his tracks. A small spacecraft, not much bigger than his pickup truck. Its metal skin gleamed silver in his flashlight beam, despite being scratched and dented from the crash. No wings, no obvious engines, no markings that looked like any language Kang knew. Not from NASA, he whispered to himself. Not from Earth. Steam rose from one side where a panel had come loose. Kang's engineer mind took over. That panel was a hazard. If there was fuel leaking, it could catch fire. Without thinking, he moved closer. Just then, a section of the craft slid open. Kang stepped back quickly, nearly falling. His old legs trembled, not just from fear, but from the excitement that rushed through him. A hand appeared at the opening, a human-looking hand, but with silvery skin that seemed to glow faintly. Then an arm, then a face. It was a woman. At least she looked mostly like a woman. Her face was shaped like a human's, but her skin had that same silvery tone. Her eyes were larger than a human's and deep violet in color. No hair grew on her head, but instead, what looked like smooth silver skin with faint patterns etched across it. She looked at Kang and said something. The words were unlike anything he had ever heard. Then she tried to pull herself out of the craft, but fell back with a cry of pain. Kang hesitated only a moment. Whatever she was hurt. He moved forward. "Let me help you," he said, knowing she probably couldn't understand him. The woman looked at him with those strange violet eyes. She reached for something inside the craft and pulled out a small device. She spoke into it, then held it out toward Kang. After a few seconds, the device made a soft humming noise. Then it spoke in a flat, computer-like voice. "Help. Injured. Safe." Kang nodded slowly. "Yes, safe. I can help." The woman spoke again into the device. This time it said, "Craft damaged. Life support failing. Please." Kang looked at the smoking craft, then at the injured woman. All his years as an engineer told him that this technology was far beyond anything he had ever worked with. But someone needed help, and that was something he understood perfectly. "Can you walk?" he asked. The device translated, and the woman shook her head. She pointed to her leg, which Kang now saw was bent at an unnatural angle. With a deep breath, Kang stepped forward and offered his arms. The woman hesitated, then reached out. As he helped her from the craft, Kang was surprised by how light she was, almost as if her bones were hollow. She winced in pain but didn't cry out as he lifted her. The translation device fell to the ground, and Kang bent carefully to pick it up without dropping his strange visitor. "My house is not far," he said, looking into those violet eyes. "We'll figure this out." The device translated, and the woman nodded slightly. As Kang carried her through the cornfield toward his farmhouse, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. The racing thoughts of an engineer facing a new problem. His mind was already working on how to help her, how to understand her technology, how to hide her if necessary. For the first time since Mija died, Kang felt truly awake. Behind them, the strange craft hissed and steamed in the darkness. 3 days had passed since Kang brought the alien woman into his home. He had made her comfortable in the guest room, where Jin stayed during her rare visits. The alien's leg was badly hurt, but Kang had helped set it straight using an old leg brace from when he had hurt his knee years ago. Kang learned her name was Yuna, or at least that was the closest sound her translation device could make in human language. Her device worked better now. Kang had helped recharge it using wires from his workshop, connected to its strange power port. On this morning, Kang brought Yuna a bowl of soup. She sat up in bed, her silver skin catching the sunlight from the window. "Thank you," her device translated. "Your food is interesting. Different, but good." Kang nodded. "My wife taught me to cook. Not as good as hers, but it will help you heal." Yuna took a careful sip. Then she put the bowl down and looked at Kang with serious eyes. "I must tell you why I am here," she said through the device. "The truth. You deserve to know." Kang sat in the chair beside the bed. "I'm listening." Yuna's hands trembled slightly as she began to speak. My people are called the Suren. We are explorers and scientists. We found Earth many years ago, but chose to watch only, to learn, never to interfere. Like Star Trek, Kang said with a small smile. The Prime Directive. The device struggled to translate this, but Yuna nodded anyway. But we are not the only ones who know about Earth, she continued. The Terok have found you too. Tarok? Kang asked. They are. Yuna's face showed pain that wasn't from her injured leg. They take worlds, take people, use them, test on them. They see humans as perfect for work and tests. Kang felt a chill. They want to invade Earth. Yes, soon. Yuna's violet eyes filled with tears. I am a scientist. I study DNA. I found a way to help stop them, a weakness in their biology. But they learned what I discovered. She reached out and touched Kang's wrinkled hand with her smooth silver one. They chased me across stars, shot my ship. I barely escaped, came to warn Earth, to help. Kang looked at her hand touching his. So alien, yet the gesture was so human. Why come to Earth if they're following you? Aren't you bringing danger here? They were already coming, Yuna said. But now I'm here first, with knowledge that can help. She tried to sit up straighter, but winced in pain. I need to repair my ship, send message to my people. And, she hesitated, I need your help. Me? Kang was surprised. I'm just an old man. What can I do? Yuna's translation device made a sound like a sad laugh. You were engineer for space machines, yes. I saw pictures in your home. NASA. That was long ago, Kang said. I'm retired. Knowledge doesn't retire, Yuna said. And you are human. You understand how your bodies work in ways I cannot. Together, we might adapt my research to protect humans from Terok. Kang stood up slowly, his joints stiff. He walked to the window and looked out at his cornfield where her ship still lay hidden. Why me? He asked. Why not find a younger engineer? A doctor? The government? Yuna was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her words came through clearly. Governments would take me, study me, waste time arguing. Young scientists would think too much about glory or fame. She paused. You helped me without question. You are wise with years, and you have nothing to lose. Those last words hit Kang hard. It was true. What did he have to lose? His quiet days alone. His empty routine. Yuna's voice broke as she said, Please, Earth is in danger. I cannot do this alone. Kang turned back to look at her. An alien from the stars, begging for his help, bringing purpose back to his life. When do we start? He asked. 1 week later, Kang's workshop looked very different. He had cleared his old tractor parts and farm tools to make room for something new. Something that didn't belong on Earth. Hand me that wrench, Kang said, pointing to his toolbox. Yuna picked up the wrench with her silver fingers. Her leg was better now. Not fully healed, but she could walk with a cane Kang had found in the attic. It had been his father's. They were working on parts from Yuna's ship. Kang had used his old truck to pull the damaged spacecraft from the cornfield at night when no one would see. Now it sat in his barn, covered with a tarp, but many of its parts were here in the workshop. This technology, Kang said, shaking his head as he examined a small metal box with glowing blue lines. I've never seen anything like it. It is simple navigation system, Yuna said through her translator, which now worked much better after Kang had helped her fix it. Basic technology for Suren children. Kang laughed. Basic? This would make NASA scientists cry with joy. Yuna tilted her head. Yet you understand it quickly. Faster than I expected. Engineering is engineering, Kang said. The rules of physics don't change, even across the stars. Just the tools we use to work with them. He connected a wire from the alien device to a power source he had built. The blue lines glowed brighter. Suddenly, a three-dimensional map of stars appeared in the air above the table. It works, Yuna said, her violet eyes wide with excitement. Kang felt proud. His old hands had done this. Hands that many thought were only good for simple farm work now. "Where is Earth on this map?" he asked. Yuna touched the floating display. The map zoomed out, showing more and more stars, until finally a small dot appeared at the edge. "Here," she said, "very far from main space routes. That is why you have been safe for so long." Kang studied the map. "And the Taruk, where are they?" Yuna's face became serious. She touched another part of the map. Red dots appeared, moving slowly but clearly in Earth's direction. "How long do we have?" Kang asked. "At current speed, 3 Earth months until first scouts arrive." Kang nodded. Not much time, but something. He turned to the workbench where he had spread out drawings and notes. Some were his old NASA designs. Others were new ideas that had come to him since meeting Yuna. "Show me again how your ship's shield works," he said. As Yuna explained, Kang wrote notes. His arthritis made his handwriting shaky, but his mind was sharp. He noticed something about Yuna's explanation. "Wait," he said. "Your shields use digital processors only. No analog backup." Yuna looked confused. "Digital is superior, more precise." Kang smiled, "but also easier to disrupt. On Earth, we learned that sometimes old technology is more reliable because it's simpler." He pulled out an old radio from a shelf, the kind with tubes instead of chips. "This would still work after an electromagnetic pulse that would fry modern electronics," he said. "Sometimes the old ways have advantages." Yuna stared at the radio, then at Kang. Slowly, understanding came to her face. "The Taruk rely completely on advanced digital systems," she said. "Their weakness might be their complexity," Kang finished, "while our strength is your simplicity," Yuna said. "Your experience with basic systems." For the first time, Kang saw real hope in her alien eyes. He felt it too, a warm feeling in his chest that pushed away the aches in his joints. "Let's get to work," he said, reaching for a pencil. "I have some ideas that might surprise our Taruk friends." The black car drove slowly up the dirt road to Kang's farm. From his kitchen window, Kang watched it approach. It was too clean, too shiny for these dusty country roads. Someone from the city. "Yuna," he called quietly. "Hide in the basement. Now." Yuna, who had been helping wash breakfast dishes, nodded. She moved quickly for someone still using a cane. In the 2 weeks since her crash, she had learned to trust Kang's instincts. The doorbell rang just as Kang heard the basement door close. He took a deep breath and walked to the front door, making his steps slow and shuffling like the old man everyone thought he was. A tall man in a dark suit stood on the porch. He had a perfect smile and perfect hair. Too perfect. "Mr. Kang?" the man asked. "I'm Agent Lee from the Department of Aerospace Monitoring. May I come in?" Kang noticed the man didn't show any ID, and there was no such thing as the Department of Aerospace Monitoring. In his NASA days, Kang had worked with every government agency related to space. "Of course," Kang said, playing along. "Would you like some tea?" The man stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room quickly. "No thank you. I'm here about unusual activity detected in this area 2 weeks ago. A possible meteorite." "Meteorite?" Kang said, acting surprised. "I didn't see anything like that." Agent Lee smiled again, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Our instruments are very precise, Mr. Kang. The object would have landed on your property." The man walked around the living room, looking at everything. He picked up a photo of Kang with his NASA team from 30 years ago. "You worked for NASA?" he asked. "Long time ago," Kang said. "Just an old engineer now. Retired." The man set down the photo and turned to Kang. Something was wrong with his movements. Too smooth, like he was still learning how to use his body. "I need to inspect your property," the man said, "particularly your fields and any outbuildings." Kang nodded slowly. Of course. But first, may I see some ID, just to be sure. The man's face changed for a second. Something flashed in his eyes that wasn't human. That won't be necessary, he said in a colder voice. Take me to your barn now. Kang knew this wasn't a government agent. This wasn't even a human. Let me get my coat first, Kang said. It's cold outside for an old man like me. He walked to the closet, his mind racing. If this was a Terok scout, as Yuna had warned might come, then Earth was in even more danger than they thought. The invasion wasn't months away. It was starting now. Kang reached past his coat and grabbed the irrigation control remote he had modified last week. It controlled the sprinklers in his garden. But now it did something else too. This way, Kang said, leading the fake agent toward the back door. As they walked through the kitchen, Kang pressed a button on the remote in his pocket. Outside, they headed toward the barn. Just as they reached the garden path, sprinklers burst to life all around them. But they weren't spraying water. They were spraying a mixture Kang and Yuna had created using chemicals from her ship and simple fertilizer from his farm. It was harmless to humans but would short-circuit the electrical systems of Terok technology. The agent began to twitch. His perfect face froze, then flickered like a bad TV signal. Beneath the human disguise, something else appeared. Gray skin, large black eyes. What have you done? The creature hissed, its voice no longer human. Just watering my garden, Kang said, backing away. Something wrong, Agent Lee. The Terok scout reached for what looked like a watch on his wrist, but his fingers wouldn't work right. The disguise technology was failing. He lunged at Kang with inhuman speed. But Kang was ready. He pressed another button on the remote. The ground beneath the Terok suddenly sank, dropping him into the old root cellar Kang had turned into a trap. Dad, this is crazy. Completely crazy. Jin stood in Kang's workshop, staring at the alien technology spread across his workbench. Her long black hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore the kind of expensive clothes that showed she was successful in the city. She had arrived an hour ago after Kang's urgent phone call. I know how it sounds, Kang said, but you've seen the proof now. Jin looked at the corner where Yuna stood quietly. Then she turned to the barn, where they had moved the unconscious Terok scout, locked in a cage made from farm equipment and alien tech. Aliens, Jin whispered. 2 different kinds of aliens in my father's farm. Jin, Kang said, putting a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Earth is in danger. We need your help. Jin was a computer expert. She worked with quantum computers, the most advanced technology on Earth. Kang needed her knowledge, but more importantly, he needed her connections. Why not tell the government? Jin asked. The military. Yuna spoke through her translator. Government response too slow. Too much arguing. Too much fear. The Terok are already here, as you have seen. We have little time. Jin took a deep breath. She walked over to examine the Terok's communication device they had taken from the scout. Her trained eyes understood technology better than Kang's. This is incredible, she said. I've never seen anything like it. Now you understand why I called you, Kang said. But we need more help. People we can trust. Jin looked up at her father. You mean your old Nizza friends? The Dinosaur Club? Kang smiled. That was what younger engineers had called his group of older colleagues. The ones who had designed spacecraft using slide rules before computers were common. Yes, he said. They are retired now, but their minds are still sharp. And they know how to keep secrets. Jin thought for a moment. I can help with the computer side. And I have access to quantum computing systems at my lab. Good, Kang said, because I have an idea. He spread out drawings on the table. Some were old NASA designs. Others were new sketches based on Yuna's technology. The Terok use advanced signals to control their ships and weapons, Kang explained. But every signal can be jammed or confused if you understand it. And you understand it now? Jin asked. Kang pointed to the Terok Scouts' equipment. Thanks to our visitor, yes. But we need help to build a system big enough to protect Earth. Jin examined the plans. This would require using Earth's satellite network. I know people who could help with that, but it's risky. More risky than alien invasion. Yuna asked. Jin couldn't argue with that. I'll make some calls, she said finally. But we need a cover story. Kang thought for a moment. Tell them we're working on an independent research project. A hobby group of retired scientists. That's not even a lie. Over the next 3 days, Kang's quiet farm became a hub of activity. 5 older men and women arrived one by one. All former NASA colleagues. All brilliant minds who had been put out to pasture because of their age. Dr. Park, a propulsion expert. Dr. Lee, a communications specialist. Dr. Kim, who had designed life support systems. Dr. Choi, a materials scientist. And Dr. Ba, who had written the code for early NASA navigation systems. They gathered in Kang's living room, these old friends. At first, there was shock when they met Yuna. Then questions. Then, as scientists always do, they got to work. The old guard, Dr. Park said with a smile as they gathered around Kang's kitchen table with coffee and plans spread out. Together again for one last mission. Kang looked at these brilliant old minds, ready to save the world without any official support or recognition. The most important mission of all, he said. 2 weeks had passed since the team came together. Kang's farmhouse had changed completely. The living room was now a planning center with maps and charts covering the walls. The barn had become a laboratory where Dr. Choi and Dr. Lee worked with parts from Yuna's ship. The basement held communications equipment that Jin had brought from her lab. Today was an important day. Their plan was almost ready. The satellites are in position, Jin said, looking at her laptop screen. She had dark circles under her eyes from working late nights. My colleagues think we're testing a new weather tracking system. Kang nodded. And our signal disruptor. Dr. Park wiped his glasses with a handkerchief. Even at 78, he was the best at understanding how engines worked. It's ready. We used parts from the Terok Scouts ship and combined them with our old NASA designs. Yuna. Kang turned to the alien woman who now moved without her cane. The biological component is prepared, she said through her translator. The sample from the Terok Scout helped me complete my research. Kang looked around the room at these remarkable people. Old scientists with wrinkled hands and gray hair. His daughter with her modern knowledge. And an alien who had traveled across stars to help them. Dr. Ba spoke up. I've written the code that will let us use Earth's satellite network to create a shield. It's not perfect, but it should confuse the Terok ship's targeting systems. And the backup? Kang asked. Dr. Kim smiled. The analog system is ready. If they try to hack our digital defenses, the old radio-based backup will kick in, just like the systems we used in the 1960s space program. Too simple for the Terok to understand. Kang checked his watch. According to their captured Terok Scouts information, the main fleet would reach Earth's orbit tomorrow. Smaller scout ships were already being detected by Jin's satellite network. We should test the system now, Jin said. Everyone moved to their stations. Dr. Lee and Dr. Choi came in from the barn, carrying what looked like an old television antenna, but with strange glowing parts attached to it. This will boost the signal, Dr. Choi explained. Let's set it up on the roof. Kang and Dr. Park climbed to the farmhouse roof. Their old knees complained, but they ignored the pain. They secured the antenna while the others watched from below. When they came back down, Jin was ready at her computer, all systems connected, ready to test. Kang nodded. Do it. Jin pressed a key. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then her screen lit up with data. It's working, she said. The shield is forming in the upper atmosphere. Dr. Ba looked at his own readings. The Terok scout ships are changing course. They're confused by our signal. The room filled with cautious smiles. Their plan was working. Earth had a defense now, created by people most of society had written off as too old to be useful. Suddenly, Jin's computer began to beep loudly. Something's wrong. A much larger ship just appeared in orbit. It's not on the trajectory we expected. Dr. Lee looked worried. They must have sent a commander ahead of the main fleet. Jin typed quickly. They're trying to break through our shield. Targeting something. It's targeting us. They've found our signal source. A loud boom shook the house. Outside, a beam of light struck the field near the barn. They'd found us, Kang said calmly. That was a warning shot. Instead of fear, Kang felt a strange peace. He had lived a long life. If he died protecting Earth, that was a good way to go. But Yuna had other ideas. We have one more option, she said, holding up a small device from her ship. We can speak to them. She handed it to Kang. Their commander will only respect strength. You must represent Earth now. Kang looked at the device, then at his friends. These old scientists who had saved the world with their outdated knowledge. Let's introduce ourselves, he said. A large circle of burned grass marked the field where the Turok ship landed. It was smaller than Kang expected, about the size of a city bus, but shaped like a smooth black egg standing on end. Steam rose from its surface as it cooled in Earth's atmosphere. Kang stood alone at the edge of his property. Behind him, hidden in the farmhouse, the others watched through windows and cameras. Jin had wanted to stand with her father, but Kang refused. If this goes wrong, he had told her, Earth will need you and the others to keep fighting. The ship's surface rippled, and a door appeared where there had been only smooth metal before. A ramp extended to the ground. A tall figure emerged. The Turok commander was at least 7 feet tall. Unlike the scout they had captured, this one wore no human disguise. His skin was gray with patterns of black lines across it. His head was hairless and slightly too large for his body. His eyes were completely black, with no whites at all. He wore what looked like armor made of the same black material as the ship. At his hip was a weapon that glowed with a faint purple light. Kang stood straight, ignoring the pain in his back. He held Yuna's communication device in his hand. The Turok commander stopped about 20 feet from Kang. He spoke, and the device in Kang's hand translated. I am Fleet Commander Hack of the Turok Dominion. You are holding one of my scouts. You are interfering with my ships using stolen technology. Kang nodded calmly. I am Kang. I speak for Earth now. Your scout came to my home uninvited. Your ships came to my world uninvited. Hack's black eyes narrowed. You are not a world leader. You are not a military commander. You are. He paused, studying Kang. You are old, near the end of your life cycle. Why would such a specimen represent this world? Kang smiled slightly. Because I was here. Because I was ready. Hack's hand moved to his weapon. The shield your primitive people have created is an annoyance. Nothing more. My main fleet will break through it easily when they arrive. I came ahead only to see what primitive world would dare resist the Turok Dominion. Then why are you here talking instead of attacking? Kang asked. Perhaps our primitive defense was stronger than you expected. Anger flashed across Hack's alien face. You have Surin help, the female scientist. That explains your temporary success. Kang took a step forward. No, the Surin brought knowledge, but humans built this defense. Old humans with old ideas that your advanced systems cannot understand. Impossible, Hack said. You rely too much on your advanced technology, Kang continued. You've forgotten the simple approaches, like using radio waves instead of quantum signals, like building mechanical backups for digital systems. Kang could see confusion in the alien's face. Your scout revealed much about your weaknesses, Kang said. And right now, every major government on Earth is receiving our plans for defending against your fleet. Our shield is expanding. Not just around my farm, but around our entire planet. This was not entirely true. They had only managed to send messages to a few military contacts through Jin's connections, but Hack didn't know that. You lie, Hack said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Test it, Kang suggested. Call your fleet to attack now. See what happens. Hack stared at Kang for a long moment. Then he reached to his wrist and pressed something. He spoke in his language, then waited. His face changed as he listened to the response. Your shield has expanded, he admitted finally. But this changes nothing. We will break through eventually. Kang shook his head. No, you won't. Because now we know you're coming. Now we are ready. And humans are very good at one thing, Commander Hack. What is that? Hack asked. Surviving, Kang said. Now take your scout and leave our world. Tell your fleet that Earth is not a target worth the cost. For the first time, Hack looked at Kang with something like respect. 3 months had passed since Commander Hack left Earth. The Terok fleet had changed course, moving away from Earth's solar system. News reports worldwide had talked about strange satellite malfunctions and unusual lights in the sky, but most people went about their lives never knowing how close they had come to invasion. Kang's farm had changed. New buildings stood near the old farmhouse. Scientists and government officials came and went daily. The barn had been replaced by a modern laboratory where human and Suran technology were studied together. On this sunny morning, Kang sat on his porch in his old rocking chair. His garden still grew, though now it was tended by young assistants rather than his own hands. May I join you? Yuna asked, stepping onto the porch. Kang nodded and gestured to the chair beside him. Always welcome. Yuna sat down. She wore clothes like humans now, though her silver skin and violet eyes still marked her as different. 2 more Suran scientists had arrived last month in a proper diplomatic ship, but Yuna had chosen to stay at the farm. The new defense system is complete, she said. Your daughter's work with quantum computing has made it even stronger than our original design. Kang nodded. Jin has always been brilliant, smarter than her old father. That is not true, Yuna said. Without your knowledge of old technology, the shield would never have worked. The Terok could have broken through any purely digital defense. Kang smiled. His weathered face had more color now than it had in years. His eyes were bright and clear. The young government man is here again, he said, looking toward a black car parked near the new laboratory. He wants me to move to Washington, to be part of the new Interstellar Relations Department. Will you go? Yuna asked. Kang looked out over his cornfield. This has been my home for many years, but perhaps it's time for one more adventure. A group of young scientists emerged from the laboratory. They waved to Kang with respect. Once, they might have seen only an old farmer. Now they saw the man who had saved Earth. The old guard is coming with me, Kang said. Dr. Park, Dr. Lee, all of them. The government has finally realized that experience has value. Your people are learning, Yuna said. That is good. Jin came out of the farmhouse carrying a tray with tea. She set it down on the small table between Kang and Yuna. The transport will be here tomorrow, Dad, she said. Are you sure about this? You could stay here. Let others do the work now. Kang shook his head. I'm not ready to just sit yet. There's too much to do, too much to learn. Jin smiled and squeezed her father's shoulder before heading back inside. Yuna poured tea for both of them. When I crashed here, I thought I was going to die on a strange world. I never imagined I would find help from an old man. Kang finished with a small laugh. From a great man, Yuna corrected. Age had nothing to do with it, except perhaps giving you wisdom the rest of your people lacked. Kang sipped his tea. Why did you stay? Your people sent a ship. You could have gone home. Yuna looked at the sky. Sometimes home changes. Sometimes we find new purpose in unexpected places. Kang understood. He felt the same way. That evening, after dinner with Jin and the science team, Kang took his telescope out to the porch one last time. He looked up at the stars, thinking how different they seemed now that he knew what was out there. Yuna joined him, pointing out her home star system. What happens next? She asked. Kang adjusted the telescope. For Earth? For us? I don't know. But for the first time in years, I'm excited to find out. He looked up from the telescope at the vast night sky. Not bad for an old man, he said softly. Yuna's hand found his, silver fingers intertwining with weathered human ones. Not bad at all, she agreed.